Human pays for old alien's travel ticket. Minutes later, 3 elite spaceships land in front of them. The bitter wind of Frostholm cut through Elvin's jacket like a knife, sending shivers down his spine as he trudged through ankle-deep snow. 3 weeks stranded on this god-forsaken ice ball had worn his patience thin. His cargo ship, the Meridian, sat useless in a repair bay with a blown quantum drive that would cost more than he could afford to fix. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The alien settlement was a sprawling collection of massive concrete structures, their smooth surfaces reflecting the dim light of the overcast sky. The locals, tall, blue-skinned humanoids called Narians, moved about with purpose, their bodies adapted to the cold that made Elvin's teeth chatter. He flexed his fingers inside his gloves, trying to restore circulation. The combat armor on his forearm, a relic from his military days, was frosted over, its matte gray surface scratched from years of service. The embedded payment device still worked, which was more than he could save for his ship. Elvin's blue eyes scanned the horizon, searching for the shuttle station. His weekly ritual: check if there were any outbound ships willing to take on a broke human courier. So far, no luck. As he approached the terminal, he noticed an elderly Narayan struggling at a payment kiosk. The alien's ashy blue skin was etched with deep wrinkles, and faint bioluminescent veins pulsed beneath his skin. He wore a minimalist gray jacket with rounded seams and a loosely draped scarf that did little to protect against the cold. The old alien's long, bony fingers trembled as he tried to operate the terminal, his movements growing increasingly frustrated. "Insufficient funds," the terminal announced in a flat, synthetic voice. "Transaction declined." The old Narayan's shoulders slumped, his tall frame hunching further. Elvin hesitated. His own credits were limited, but something about the defeated posture of the elderly alien stirred something in him. Before he could talk himself out of it, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," Elvin said, his translator converting his words to the melodic Narayan language. "Having trouble?" The old alien turned, his pale eyes widening slightly at the sight of a human. "The terminal refuses my payment," he explained, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of his species. "I fear I must wait for the next shuttle." Elvin glanced at the terminal display. The fare wasn't much. He could cover it and still have enough for a meal. What the hell, he thought. Maybe the universe would repay the favor someday. "Let me help," he offered, raising his arm to the scanner. The payment device in his combat armor beeped as it connected to the terminal. "Where are you headed?" "The southern settlement," the old Narian replied, watching with surprise as Elvin authorized the payment. "You are most kind, human. Such generosity is rare among strangers." Elvin shrugged. "Name's Elvin, former military pilot, current stranded courier." He forced a smile. "Just paying it forward." The terminal chimed as it processed the payment. "Transaction approved. Boarding pass issued." The old Narian accepted the pass with a gracious nod. "I am Thalir. Your kindness will not be forgotten." Before Elvin could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. A shadow fell across the terminal as a massive ship descended through the cloud cover, its sleek black hull absorbing what little light filtered through the overcast sky. Red and blue signal lights pulsed along its length as it hovered silently above them. Then 2 more ships appeared, flanking the first. "What the—" Elvin's hand instinctively moved to where his sidearm would have been if he hadn't been forced to surrender it upon landing on Frostholm. The ships were unlike anything he'd seen before, clearly military grade, with the kind of stealth tech that cost more than most planetary governments could afford. The lead vessel extended landing gear and touched down with barely a sound, its ramp descending to the snow-covered ground. A figure emerged from the ship, a female Narian with smooth seafoam-colored skin. She wore a tight-fitting jumpsuit in a deep teal-gray shade, layered with a refined high-collared cloak. Her long silver hair flowed over her shoulders, dusted with snowflakes that didn't seem to melt against her cold-adapted skin. Her emerald gold eyes locked onto Elvin, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Grandfather," she called out, her voice carrying across the terminal. "We've been searching everywhere for you." Thalir straightened, his demeanor shifting subtly. "Arella, my dear, I was merely enjoying some independence." The woman, Arella, approached them, her movements fluid and graceful. Up close, Elvin could see the family resemblance in the structure of their faces. Though where Thalia was weathered and worn, she was polished and pristine. "You disappeared from the estate without a word," she chided gently. "The family has been worried sick." Thalia made a dismissive gesture. "I wish to travel as ordinary citizens do. This human, Elvin, was kind enough to assist me when my funds were insufficient." Arella turned her attention to Elvin, her gaze appraising. "Is that so? Well then, it seems we owe you our gratitude, Elvin." "It was nothing," Elvin said, suddenly uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "Just a shuttle ticket." "A kindness shown to my grandfather is never nothing," she replied. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Especially when that grandfather happens to be Thalia Vosakari, recently retired head of House Akari Trading Consortium." Elvin felt his stomach drop. House Akari was one of the largest interstellar trading houses in the sector, which meant the old man he'd just helped was essentially royalty. "I didn't know," he managed. "Clearly," Arella said, her smile warming slightly. "Which makes your gesture all the more intriguing." She glanced at his worn combat armor, the frost-covered seams of his jacket. "You're stranded here, aren't you?" Before Elvin could answer, Thalia stepped forward. "He mentioned being a courier with a disabled vessel. We should offer our assistance, Arella. It would be the proper response to his kindness." Arella considered this, her eyes never leaving Elvin's face. "Indeed. In fact, grandfather, I believe we should invite him to dinner. The family would be delighted to meet someone who assists strangers without thought of reward." Elvin opened his mouth to decline, but Thalia spoke first. "Excellent suggestion. What say you, Elvin? Would you join us this evening at the family estate?" Trapped between politeness and self-preservation, Elvin hesitated. Dining with one of the wealthiest families in the sector wasn't exactly how he'd planned to spend his evening. On the other hand, they might be his ticket off this frozen rock. "I'd be honored," he said finally. Arella's smile widened, revealing perfect teeth. "Wonderful. I'll have your things collected from your lodgings." She gestured toward the lead ship. "Shall we?" As Elvin followed them toward the waiting vessel, he couldn't shake the feeling that his simple act of kindness had just catapulted him into something far more complex than he'd bargained for. Behind them, the shuttle terminal continued its monotonous announcements, oblivious to the fact that Elvin's life had just taken a dramatic turn. The Akari estate sprawled across a sheltered valley 30 kilometers from Frostholm's main settlement. Unlike the stark utilitarian structures of the city, the compound was an architectural marvel, sweeping curves of polished stone and transparent alloy that seemed to grow organically from the snowy landscape. As the ship descended toward a private landing pad, Elvin pressed his face to the viewport, taking in the scale of the place. The main building alone could house a small village, its crystalline spires catching the fading light of Frostholm's distant sun. "Impressed?" Arella asked, watching his reaction with evident amusement. "It's not exactly what I expected to find on a backwater ice planet," Elvin admitted. Thalia chuckled, the sound like ice cracking. "House Akari maintains residences on 17 worlds. This one is modest by our standards." "Modest. Right." Elvin had grown up in a prefab colony unit on a terraforming outpost. His entire hometown could fit in the Akari's garden. The ship touched down with barely a tremor. As the ramp extended, Elvin noticed a welcoming party assembled on the landing pad, a mix of Narian household staff and security personnel, their postures formal and attentive. "Don't be nervous," Arella said, misreading his hesitation. "We don't bite, at least not our guests." Her lips quirked in what might have been a joke. Elvin followed them down the ramp, acutely aware of his shabby appearance next to the immaculate Icarus. His combat armor, once the pride of the Terran Defense Fleet, now looked like a relic next to the sleek, modern attire of the household staff. A tall Narian male stepped forward, his bearing military despite his civilian clothes. "Lady Arella, Lord Thalia," he greeted them with a formal bow. "We're relieved to see you safely returned." "Thank you, Kareth," Arella replied. "This is Elvin, our honored guest. He'll be joining us for dinner and staying the night. Please see that his needs are attended to." Kareth's pale eyes assessed Elvin with professional detachment. "Of course, my lady. Will the guest require medical attention?" His gaze lingered on a half-healed cut on Elvin's cheek, a souvenir from a bar fight his second night on Frostholm. I'm fine, Elvin said quickly. Just need a hot shower and maybe some food that didn't come from a vending machine. This earned him a small smile from Arella. Kareth will show you to a guest suite. We dine in 2 hours. That should give you time to refresh yourself. Before Elvin could thank her, she was swept away by a cluster of aides, all speaking rapidly in the harmonic tones of High Nerean. Thalir gave Elvin a conspiratorial wink before following his granddaughter, leaving the human alone with Kareth. This way, sir, the Nerean said, gesturing toward the main building. As they walked, Elvin took in the details of the estate. Despite its beauty, there were unmistakable signs of security measures, disguised sensor arrays, strategically positioned guard posts, and the occasional glimpse of armed personnel patrolling the perimeter. Is all this security normal? Elvin asked, nodding toward a pair of guards. Kareth's expression remained neutral. House Akari values its privacy. Which wasn't an answer, but Elvin knew better than to press. Instead, he changed tack. So, what's the deal with the old man? Does he make a habit of wandering off? This earned him a sharp look. Lord Thaler's activities are his own concern. It would be unwise to speculate. Message received. Elvin fell silent as they entered the main building through a set of doors that whispered open at their approach. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, intricate light fixtures that mimicked constellations, and artwork that seemed to shift and change as they passed. After navigating a maze of corridors, Kareth stopped before an ornate door. Your suite, sir. The environmental controls have been adjusted for human comfort. You'll find appropriate attire in the wardrobe. If you require anything else, simply speak your request aloud. The house system will relay it to staff. With that, he bowed slightly and departed, leaving Elvin alone in the corridor. The suite turned out to be larger than Elvin's entire ship. A sitting area with plush furniture flowed into a bedroom dominated by a massive bed. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the snow-covered mountains beyond the estate. The bathroom featured a shower large enough for 4 people and a tub that looked more like a small pool. Elvin whistled low. Not bad for a day that started with stale coffee and frozen socks? He stripped off his grimy clothes and stepped into the shower, groaning with pleasure as hot water sluiced over his body for the first time in weeks. The cheap hostel where he'd been staying had only sonic cleaners, which removed dirt but did nothing for the bone-deep chill of Frostholm. After thoroughly scrubbing away the grime of his extended stay on the ice planet, Elvin explored the wardrobe. As promised, it contained clothing in his size, simple but elegant attire that wouldn't look out of place at a formal dinner. He selected black trousers and a deep blue tunic that complemented his eyes, surprised by how well they fit. Dressed and feeling more human than he had in weeks, Elvin wandered to the windows, watching as the last light faded from the sky. Stars emerged, brighter and clearer than they appeared from the city, their cold light reflecting off the snow. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Elvin, a melodic voice announced from hidden speakers. Lady Arella requests your presence in the East Salon before dinner. Kareth will arrive shortly to escort you. Thank you, Elvin replied, unsure if the house system required acknowledgement. True to the announcement, Kareth appeared minutes later, his expression as unreadable as before. He led Elvin through another series of corridors to a warmly lit room where Arella stood alone, gazing out at the starlit landscape. She had changed into a flowing gown of midnight blue, accented with silver threads that caught the light when she moved. Her silver hair was arranged in an intricate style that emphasized the elegant curve of her neck. Ah, Elvin, she said, turning as they entered. Much better. You clean up well for a stranded courier. Elvin offered a small bow, mimicking the gesture he'd seen from the staff. And you look stunning. It wasn't flattery. She was genuinely beautiful in an alien, ethereal way. Arella's lips curved in a smile. Charming. I wanted a moment alone with you before dinner. Grandfather has taken quite a liking to you, but I find myself curious about the man who would help a stranger without question. She gestured to a seating area where a decanter and glasses waited. Drink? It's Terran whiskey. I believe that's still the preferred spirit of your military. Former military, Elvin corrected, accepting a glass. But yes, old habits die hard. Arella settled gracefully onto a couch, indicating that Elvin should sit opposite her. Tell me about yourself. What brings a former Terran military pilot to Frostholm, of all places? Elvin sipped the whiskey. It was good, Far better than anything he could afford. I'm a courier now, independent contractor. I was transporting research equipment to the science outpost on Helios Prime when my quantum drive malfunctioned. Frostholm was the nearest port where I could make an emergency landing. And now you're stranded, Arella observed. Unable to afford repairs, I presume? Elvin nodded, trying not to show how much it stung. The parts alone cost more than my last 3 jobs combined. I've been trying to pick up local work to save up, but... He shrugged. Not much demand for human labor here. What did you do in the military? Her question seemed casual, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. Pilot, like I said. Tactical Response Unit. He didn't elaborate on what that meant. The missions that took him to contested colonies, the extraction of VIPs from hostile territory, the occasional wet work that never appeared in official records. And now you deliver packages, she said, a hint of skepticism in her tone. It's honest work, Elvin replied, an edge creeping into his voice. Pays the bills. Usually. Arella studied him for a long moment, then set down her glass. House Ikari values those who show kindness without agenda, Elvin. It's a rare quality in our circles. She leaned forward slightly. I believe we may be able to help each other. Before she could elaborate, the door opened and Talir entered, accompanied by 2 younger Narayan males who shared his features. Ah, good, you've started without us, Thalir said cheerfully. Elvin, meet my grandsons, Navan and Perrin. The 2 Narians nodded politely, though Elvin didn't miss the calculating look in their eyes as they assessed him. Grandfather has told us of your generosity, said the taller one. Nevan, Elvin guessed. House Ikari is in your debt. A shuttle ticket is hardly worth mentioning, Elvin said, uncomfortable with the formality. It's not the value of the gesture, but its nature, Perrin replied, his voice cooler than his brother's. Particularly when directed toward the patriarch of our house. There was something in his tone that made Elvin's instincts prickle. These weren't just family members welcoming a guest. They were assessing a potential threat. Shall we proceed to dinner? Arella suggested, rising smoothly. The chef has prepared a special menu in honor of our guest. As they moved toward the dining room, Elvin felt Arella's hand brush his arm, a fleeting touch that might have been accidental if not for the meaningful look she gave him. We'll continue our discussion later, she murmured, too low for the others to hear. There's much more I'd like to know about you, Elvin. The dining room was as opulent as the rest of the estate, dominated by a table that could seat 20. Only 5 places were set, however, clustered at one end to create a more intimate setting. As servants appeared with the first course, Elvin couldn't help but wonder what he'd gotten himself into. This wasn't just a thank you dinner, it was an evaluation. The question was, for what purpose? He'd have to tread carefully. In his experience, the wealthy and powerful never did anything without reason, and their games could be deadly for those who didn't know the rules. The first course arrived, a delicate soup that shimmered with an iridescent blue glow, served in bowls that appeared to be carved from a single piece of ice, but remained curiously warm to the touch. Luminous sea bloom bisque, Thaler explained, noting Elvin's hesitation. A Narian delicacy, but perfectly compatible with human physiology. In fact, I believe your people find it quite invigorating. Elvin took a cautious sip. The flavor was unlike anything he'd tasted before, briny yet sweet, with a subtle heat that spread from his tongue to his fingertips, chasing away the lingering chill of Frostholm. It's amazing, he admitted, taking another spoonful. Our chef will be pleased, Arella said. He rarely has the opportunity to prepare dishes for humans. The conversation flowed easily enough on the surface. Questions about Earth, comments on interstellar politics, observations about the peculiarities of different species' customs. Yet beneath the pleasantries, Elvin sensed currents of tension, particularly between Arella and her cousins. So, Elvin, Nevan said, setting down his spoon, what exactly does a courier of your background transport these days? Surely not just research equipment. The question had a barbed edge to it. Elvin maintained a neutral expression as he considered his response. Whatever pays, he replied simply. Scientific instruments, diplomatic pouches, luxury goods. I don't ask questions as long as it's legal. Perrin's lips curved in a thin smile. How principled. And your current cargo, the one stranded with your ship. Medical supplies for the research outpost on Helios Prime, Elvin said, meeting the Narian's gaze steadily. Nothing exotic, just specialized equipment they can't synthesize locally. Fascinating, Perrin murmured, clearly unconvinced. And yet you chose to land on Frostholm rather than continuing to Helios. Curious decision. Not when your quantum drive is about to implode, Elvin countered. I prefer being stranded to being atomized. Thalir chuckled, breaking the tension. Wise choice, my boy. Death tends to interfere with one's career prospects. Servants appeared to clear the soup course, replacing it with platters of what looked like roasted meat surrounded by spiral-cut vegetables in vibrant colors. Glacier elk, Arella explained, native to Frostholm's northern ranges. The cold climate makes the meat exceptionally tender. She was right. The meat practically melted in Elvin's mouth, rich with flavors he couldn't identify but found delicious. Tell us about your military service, Nevin said, cutting into his own portion. Grandfather mentioned you were a pilot. Elvin nodded, chewing slowly to buy time. Tactical response unit, mostly transport and extraction missions. Extraction? Perrin raised an eyebrow. That sounds rather diplomatic for what such units typically do. Perrin, Arella warned, her tone sharpening. What? I'm merely making conversation, Perrin replied innocently. After all, if we're to trust this human with our hospitality, Arella cut in smoothly, we should at least know something about him. The slip wasn't lost on Elvin. They were considering trusting him with something. But what? My service record is classified, he said carefully, but I served with honor and was discharged on good terms. The courier business was a natural transition. Same skill set, fewer people shooting at me. This earned a genuine laugh from Thalir. Well put, though I imagine the pay is considerably less impressive. Can't argue with that, Elvin admitted. Perhaps we can remedy that situation, Arella suggested, her eyes meeting Elvin's across the table. House Ikari is always in need of reliable transport services for sensitive items. Nevan set down his fork with a sharp click. Arella, this is hardly the time or place to discuss business matters. On the contrary, she replied coolly, I believe it's the perfect time. Elvin has demonstrated both integrity and discretion, qualities we value highly. Based on a single act of charity? Perrin scoffed. For all we know, he could be an operative for House Marathi or even the Regulatory Commission. Elvin's pulse quickened at the mention of the commission, the interstellar body that ostensibly maintained order among the trading houses, but was widely known to be corrupt and ineffective. I'm just a courier who helped an old man, he said, keeping his voice level. Nothing more complicated than that. See? Thalir gestured expansively. Simple kindness, a rare commodity these days, especially in our circles. The tension at the table was palpable now. Elvin had the distinct impression he was witnessing a power struggle playing out in real time, with him as both audience and unwitting participant. Perhaps we should discuss this after dinner, Arella suggested, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. For now, let's enjoy Chef Doran's efforts, shall we? The remainder of the meal passed in strained politeness. Elvin focused on his food, each course more exquisite than the last, while keeping his senses alert to the undercurrents of conversation around him. By the time dessert was served, a confection of frozen fruits and spiced cream, he had pieced together a rough picture of the dynamics at play. Thalir, though officially retired, still held considerable influence over House Ikari's operations. Arella appeared to be his chosen successor, but her cousins clearly had their own ambitions. The old man's unauthorized excursion into the city had created a vulnerability that all parties were maneuvering to exploit. And somehow, Elvin's chance encounter with Thalir had placed him squarely in the middle of this family drama. As the meal concluded, Thalir rose from his seat. If you'll excuse me, I find I'm rather tired after today's adventures. Elvin, it was a pleasure to dine with you. I hope we'll speak again before you depart. With that, the old Nerian left, accompanied by a hovering attendant who materialized from the shadows. I should retire as well, Nevin announced, not bothering to disguise his displeasure. Perrin, shall we? The brothers departed, leaving Elvin alone with Arella, who signaled for the servants to clear the table. Walk with me, she said once they were gone. The gardens are particularly beautiful under the stars. The garden turned out to be an enormous greenhouse attached to the main building, filled with plants from dozens of worlds. Despite the frigid temperatures outside, the interior was warm and humid, alive with the sounds of flowing water and the sweet scent of alien blossoms. "Your cousins don't like me much," Elvin observed as they strolled along a winding path. Arella laughed softly. "My cousins don't like anyone who might interfere with their ambitions. Don't take it personally." "And what exactly do they think I might interfere with?" She stopped beside a pool where luminous fish darted among strange, tentacled plants. "House Akari is at a crossroads, Elvin. My grandfather is stepping back from active leadership, and the succession is contested. Let me guess. You're his choice, but the cousins have other ideas?" "Perceptive," she acknowledged. "Nevin and Perrin believe that as male heirs, they have a stronger claim. Traditional Narayan values and all that." Her tone made it clear what she thought of such traditions. "And where do I fit into this family drama?" Elvin asked bluntly. Arella turned to face him, her emerald gold eyes reflecting the bioluminescent glow of the plants around them. "I need someone I can trust, someone outside our usual channels, someone with your particular skill set." "For what exactly?" "Transport and security," she replied. "There's an item, a data core, that I need delivered to our facility on Helios Prime." Elvin raised an eyebrow. "Helios Prime? That's where I was headed before my ship broke down." "I know. Convenient, isn't it?" Her smile was enigmatic. "The data core contains information vital to House Akari's interests, information that could secure my position as successor." "And your cousins would prefer this information didn't reach its destination?" Elvin guessed. "Precisely, which is why I can't use our regular couriers or ships. They're all potentially compromised." Elvin crossed his arms. "So you want to use me instead, a stranded human with a broken ship and no connection to House Akari?" "I'm offering to repair your ship," Arella said. "Full overhaul, not just the quantum drive, plus a fee generous enough to keep you comfortable for a year." It was tempting, almost too tempting. "What's on this data core that's so important?" Arella's expression grew serious. "Evidence of illegal activities by my cousins. Weapons dealing primarily. They've been selling restricted technology to frontier worlds, using House Akari's shipping network to bypass commission regulations." "And you want to expose them?" "I want to protect our house," she corrected. "If this information became public, it would destroy House Akari's reputation. But if I control it, I can force my cousins to step aside without scandal." Elvin studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Her story was plausible enough. The trading houses were notorious for skirting regulations when profitable, but something felt off. "Why me?" he asked finally. "You could hire any number of mercenaries or freelancers with cleaner ships and better equipment." "Because you helped my grandfather without expecting anything in return," she said simply. "That speaks to your character, and in my experience, character is more valuable than equipment." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body. "Besides, I've had you investigated since we brought you here. Former Lieutenant Elvin Pollard, Terran Defense Fleet Special Operations, decorated twice for valor under fire, honorably discharged after the Proxima incident, though the official records are conveniently vague about your role there." Elvin's jaw tightened. The Proxima incident wasn't something he discussed, ever. "You've been thorough." "I'm offering you a chance to get off this frozen rock and back to your life, Elvin. All you have to do is deliver one small package to a destination you were already headed for." Put that way, it sounded simple enough. But in Elvin's experience, nothing involving trading house politics was ever simple. "I'll need details," he said. "Security protocols, contingency plans, exact specifications of what I'm transporting." Arella's smile widened. "Does that mean you accept?" "It means I'm considering it," Elvin replied cautiously. "I'll need to see the repairs to my ship completed first. And payment, half up front." "Of course," she agreed readily. "I'll have the technical team begin work on your ship tomorrow. The Meridian, yes? Currently in Base 17 at the spaceport?" The fact that she knew this without him telling her confirmed his suspicion that she'd been planning this before their chance meeting. Had Thalir's excursion been orchestrated as well? It seemed unlikely the former head of a major trading house would actually run short of funds for a shuttle ticket. "One more thing," Elvin said. "I want to speak with your grandfather. Alone." Arella's expression flickered briefly before settling back into its composed mask. "May I ask why?" Call it due diligence, Elvin replied. If I'm going to get involved in House Akari's business, I want to hear from the man in charge that he approves. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. I'll arrange it for tomorrow morning. For now, you should rest. It's been an eventful day. As they walked back toward the main building, Elvin's mind raced through the implications of Arella's offer. The pay was good, too good for a simple courier job, even accounting for the sensitive nature of the cargo. And the coincidence of his destination matching hers was suspicious at best. There was more to this situation than Arella was telling him. The question was whether he could discover the truth before committing himself to a course of action that might prove dangerous or even deadly. Back in his suite, Elvin found that someone had laid out night clothes and turned down the bed. The luxury was almost disorienting after weeks in a cheap hostel. He checked the room for surveillance devices, an old habit from his military days, and found 3, one in the light fixture, one behind the mirror in the bathroom, and one in the environmental control panel. Standard security for a house like this, but it meant he'd need to watch what he said and did. As he settled into the absurdly comfortable bed, Elvin reviewed what he knew. House Akari was in the midst of a succession struggle. Arella wanted him to transport sensitive information that could undermine her cousin's position. The cousins clearly viewed him with suspicion, and Old Man Thalir, the supposed catalyst for this entire situation, remained an enigma. Was he truly the doddering grandfather who'd wandered off without funds, or was there more to his story? Tomorrow Elvin would seek answers. For tonight, he would enjoy the luxury of a warm bed and try not to think about how quickly his simple act of kindness had complicated his life. As he drifted toward sleep, one thought persisted. In his experience, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was, and Arella's offer definitely qualified. Elvin woke to the soft chime of the room's environmental system, adjusting to morning settings. Pale sunlight filtered through the windows, illuminating the suite in a gentle glow that belied the frigid temperatures outside. For a moment, he lay still, savoring the comfort of the bed, a luxury he hadn't experienced since leaving Earth. Then reality reasserted itself. He was in the home of one of the sector's most powerful trading families, being recruited for a mission that likely involved more danger than he was being told. Time to get some answers. After a quick shower, he found fresh clothes laid out, similar to yesterday's but in different colors. The combat armor from his forearm was missing, however. In its place was a note. Being cleaned and serviced, will be returned before departure. Convenient timing, Elvin thought wryly. Without his armor, he was also without his personal comm unit and emergency beacon, effectively isolated. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Kareth, the same Narayan who had escorted him yesterday. "Good morning, sir," Kareth said with a formal bow. "Lord Thalir is ready to receive you in his private study. If you'll follow me." The route to Thalir's study took them through parts of the estate Elvin hadn't seen the previous day. Galleries filled with artwork from dozens of worlds, libraries with actual physical books, a rarity in the digital age, and observation rooms with panoramic views of the snow-covered landscape. Finally, they arrived at a heavy wooden door, actual wood, not synthetic, guarded by 2 Narayans whose formal attire didn't quite disguise their military bearing. "The human guest to see Lord Thalir," Kareth announced. The guards nodded and one opened the door, gesturing for Elvin to enter alone. The study beyond was smaller and more intimate than Elvin had expected. A warm, book-lined room with comfortable seating and a desk positioned to take advantage of the morning light. Thalir sat in a high-backed chair near a fireplace where actual flames danced, casting flickering shadows across the room. "Ah, Elvin, come in," the old Narayan called, gesturing to a chair opposite his own. "Have you breakfasted?" "I can have something brought if you're hungry." "I'm fine, thank you," Elvin replied, taking the offered seat. Up close, Thalir looked more alert than he had the previous day, his eyes sharper, his posture less hunched. "Then perhaps some tea? I've developed a fondness for Terran green tea in my old age. Something about the tannins agrees with my constitution." Without waiting for a response, Thalir poured 2 cups from a delicate pot, handing one to Elvin. The familiar scent of green tea wafted up, unexpectedly comforting in these alien surroundings. "I understand you wish to speak with me," Thalir said, settling back in his chair. "I confess, I'm curious about what a human courier might want to discuss with an old Narayan like myself. Elvin took a sip of tea, gathering his thoughts. Your granddaughter has made me an interesting offer. Ah, yes, the data core. Thalia nodded sagely. Arella mentioned she intended to recruit you for that particular errand. And you approve? Would it matter if I didn't? Thalia's eyes twinkled with amusement. Arella has been making her own decisions since she was tall enough to reach the control panels of her first hovercraft. Elvin set down his cup. With respect, sir, I think it would matter a great deal. House Akari is still your house, retired or not. Thalia studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then unexpectedly he laughed, a rich, genuine sound that filled the small room. Well observed. Yes, despite my supposed retirement, I maintain certain oversight functions. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Tell me, Elvin, what do you make of my granddaughter's offer? I think there's more to it than she's telling me, Elvin replied honestly. The coincidence of my original destination matching her needs is suspicious, and the payment she's offering exceeds standard rates for secure transport by a considerable margin. Perceptive, Thalia murmured, and yet you're still considering her offer. I need my ship repaired, Elvin said simply, and I admit I'm curious about what's really going on here. Thalia's lips curved in a small smile. Curiosity can be a dangerous trait, especially when dealing with trading houses. He sipped his tea thoughtfully. But in this case, it might serve you well. He set down his cup and leaned back, his expression growing more serious. The data core Arella wishes you to transport does indeed contain evidence of illegal activities, but not merely the weapons dealing she described to you. What else? Elvin asked, his suspicions confirmed. Information about a discovery, a world beyond the established trade routes, rich in resources that could shift the balance of power among the houses. Thalia's eyes gleamed. A human world, Elvin. One of your lost colonies abandoned during the diaspora wars, but still viable, still inhabited. Elvin felt a chill that had nothing to do with Frostholm's climate. The diaspora wars had scattered humanity across dozens of star systems, with many colony ships lost or presumed destroyed. The discovery of a surviving lost colony would be significant, not just economically, but culturally and politically as well. How did House Hikari come across this information? He asked carefully. One of our survey vessels detected unusual transmission patterns while charting a new trade route, Thalia explained. Upon investigation, they found a thriving human settlement, primitive by current standards but remarkably resilient. They've developed their own culture, their own technology, isolated from the rest of humanity for over 2 centuries. And now House Akari wants to exploit them, Elvin concluded, a sour taste in his mouth. Thalia shook his head. Not exploit, partner. This colony sits on deposits of rare minerals essential for advanced drive systems. Currently, those minerals are controlled by House Marithi, who charge exorbitant prices and limit supply to maintain their monopoly. Breaking that monopoly would be worth billions, Elvin realized. Trillions, Thalia corrected. But more importantly, it would reduce the cost of interstellar travel for everyone, opening new opportunities for exploration and settlement. It sounded noble enough, but Elvin had been around long enough to know that trading houses rarely acted from altruism. And where do your grandsons fit into this? Arella claims they're dealing weapons illegally. They are, Thalia confirmed, his expression darkening. But not merely to frontier worlds as Arella suggested. They've been supplying advanced weaponry to a faction within this lost colony, preparing them to seize control when House Akari makes official contact. Creating a puppet government, Elvin said, disgusted but not surprised. Precisely, they intend to establish exclusive mining rights through this faction, effectively creating a new monopoly under House Akari control. Thalia sighed heavily. It would be Proxima all over again. The mention of Proxima sent a jolt through Elvin. The Proxima incident had been his last mission, a supposedly humanitarian operation to a colony world that had devolved into a bloodbath when corporate interests manipulated local factions into conflict. You know about my involvement in Proxima, Elvin said, his voice tight. I know you tried to prevent the massacre, Thalia replied gently, and that your superiors ignored your warnings about the weapons being smuggled to the separatist faction. Elvin's hands clenched involuntarily. Thousands had died in that conflict, Civilians caught in the crossfire of a war engineered by corporate interests seeking control of Proxima's valuable helium-3 deposits? History repeats itself, he muttered. Not necessarily, Thaler said. The data core contains not only the coordinates of the lost colony, but evidence of my grandson's weapons dealing and their communications with the faction they're supporting. If delivered to the right people at Helios Prime, it could prevent a tragedy. The right people being Commander Thalia Rowland, Terran Defense Fleet Intelligence Division. Elvin's eyebrows shot up. TDF Intelligence? You're working with Terran authorities? Not officially, Thalia admitted, but Commander Rowland and I share concerns about the destabilizing effects of corporate warfare on frontier worlds. She's positioned at Helios Prime under diplomatic cover, gathering evidence of trading house violations. Elvin sat back, processing this revelation. So Arella doesn't know the true purpose of this delivery? She knows some of it, Thaler said carefully. She's aware of the lost colony and her cousin's weapons dealing, but she believes the data is meant for our own security division, not Terran intelligence. You're playing a dangerous game, old man, Elvin observed. Thaler smiled thinly. At my age, all games are dangerous. The question is whether they're worth playing. He leaned forward. This one is, Elvin. For humanity and for the stability of this sector. Why tell me all this? Why not let me deliver the package believing Arella's version? Because you deserve to know what you're truly involved in, Thaler replied, and because I suspect you, of all people, understand the importance of preventing another Proxima. The old Narayan was right. If there was even a chance of preventing such a tragedy, Elvin had a moral obligation to help. I'll do it, he said finally, but I want your word that my ship will be fully repaired, regardless of the outcome. You have it, Thaler promised. The repairs are already underway. And Elvin, he hesitated, be careful with Arella. She's brilliant and principled, but she's also ambitious. House Ikari is her life. Meaning she might not approve of your collaboration with Terran intelligence. Meaning her loyalty to our house might outweigh her ethical concerns if forced to choose? Thaler clarified. I love my granddaughter, but I harbor no illusions about the lengths to which she'll go to protect our family's interests. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. Thaler glanced at a small device on his wrist. It seems Arella is looking for you. We should conclude our discussion. As Elvin rose to leave, Thaler caught his arm. One last thing. The data core is key to respond only to human DNA. A precaution against interception. Arella will provide it to you before you depart. Elvin nodded, his mind already racing through the implications of what he'd learned. As he turned to go, Thaler called after him. And Elvin, thank you, not just for agreeing to this mission, but for your kindness yesterday. It's reassuring to know that such qualities still exist in our cynical universe. The Meridian hummed with renewed power as Elvin ran through pre-flight checks. True to Thaler's word, House Ikari's technical team had not only repaired the quantum drive, but upgraded several key systems. The ship hadn't run this smoothly since it left the factory. All systems nominal, the ship's AI reported. Quantum drive at 100% efficiency. We are cleared for departure in 10 minutes. Elvin nodded, his attention focused on the small data core secured in a special compartment beneath the pilot's console. The unassuming device, no larger than his palm, contained information that could prevent a war and save countless lives, if he could deliver it safely. The cargo bay door hissed open behind him. Elvin turned, expecting to see a spaceport official with final clearance documents. Instead, Arella stood in the doorway, her elegant form silhouetted against the bright lights of the hangar. I wanted to see you off personally, she said, stepping into the ship. She wore a practical jumpsuit rather than her usual formal attire, making her look younger, less intimidating. That's thoughtful, Elvin replied cautiously, remembering Thaler's warning about his granddaughter. Arella moved closer, her eyes scanning the cockpit. The technicians report they've completed all requested upgrades. You should have no trouble reaching Helios Prime. I appreciate the thoroughness, Elvin said. Your grandfather was generous. At the mention of Thaler, something flickered across Arella's face. A momentary tension quickly masked. Yes, he's always had a soft spot for acts of kindness. She paused, studying Elvin's face. Did you have a productive conversation with him this morning? The question seemed casual, but Elvin sensed the weight behind it. "We discussed the importance of the data I'm carrying," he replied carefully. "He shares your concerns about your cousin's activities." Did he mention anything else? About the data's destination, perhaps? And there it was, the real reason for her visit. Elvin kept his expression neutral. "Just that it contains evidence that needs to reach Helios Prime securely. Is there something else I should know?" Arella hesitated, then sighed softly. "My grandfather is a brilliant man, but he sometimes pursues unconventional alliances. I merely wanted to ensure he hadn't complicated your mission with additional instructions." "Nothing I can't handle," Elvin assured her, deliberately ambiguous. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied. "Good. The payment has been transferred to your account as agreed. Half now, half upon confirmation of delivery." "I'll signal when the package is delivered safely," Elvin promised. Arella stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the subtle fragrance she wore. Something cool and crisp, like the first snow of winter. "Be careful, Elvin. My cousins have resources beyond Frostholm. If they suspect what you're carrying..." "I've dealt with worse," he said, more confidently than he felt. To his surprise, she reached out and touched his cheek lightly. "I believe you have." Her eyes held his, searching. "There's more to you than a simple courier, Elvin Pollard. Perhaps when this is over, we might explore that further." Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed him. A brief, cool press of lips that ended almost before he registered it had begun. "For luck," she murmured, stepping back. "Safe journey." With that, she turned and left the ship, her slender form disappearing down the ramp. Moments later, the cargo bay door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Elvin released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The kiss had caught him off guard, as had the apparent sincerity behind it. Was it genuine attraction, or another layer of manipulation? With Arella, it was impossible to tell. "Departure clearance granted," the ship's AI announced. "Launch window open." Pushing thoughts of Arella aside, Elvin focused on the controls. The Meridian lifted smoothly from the hangar floor, its repaired thrusters responding with newfound precision as he guided it toward the open bay doors. Frostholm fell away beneath him, its ice-covered surface gleaming in the pale sunlight as the Meridian climbed toward the stars. Once clear of the atmosphere, Elvin set course for Helios Prime and engaged the quantum drive. The familiar sensation of reality folding around the ship washed over him as the Meridian slipped into quantum space. The journey to Helios Prime would take approximately 12 hours, time enough to review the data he was carrying and prepare for potential complications upon arrival. Engaging the autopilot, Elvin retrieved the data core from its compartment. As Thalir had mentioned, it required human DNA to activate. A simple press of his thumb against the biometric scanner unlocked its contents. The holographic display that materialized above the core was dense with information: star charts, communications logs, weapons manifests, and detailed scans of a planet Elvin didn't recognize. He focused first on the coordinates of the lost colony, committing them to memory in case the core was compromised. The planet appeared Earth-like: blue oceans, green and brown land masses, white cloud patterns swirling across its surface. Sensor readings indicated an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and gravity 1.1 times Earth standard, perfectly habitable for humans. Further data revealed a population of approximately 3 million, descended from the colonists of the generation ship Prometheus, believed lost during the Diaspora Wars. They had developed a society roughly equivalent to Earth's early 21st century, with regional governments united under a global council. And they were sitting on the largest known deposits of novium, the rare mineral essential for advanced quantum drive systems. No wonder House Ikari and House Marithi were interested. Whoever controlled those deposits would dominate interstellar transportation for decades to come. Elvin's attention shifted to the weapons manifests. The list was extensive and alarming: military-grade pulse rifles, tactical explosives, even short-range missile systems. Enough firepower to equip a small army, all traced to shell companies owned by Navan and Paranikari. The communications logs were equally damning: detailed exchanges with a faction calling itself the Prometheus Liberation Front, outlining plans to overthrow the Global Council once House Ikari made official contact. It was Proxima all over again, corporate interests fomenting civil war to gain control of valuable resources. Except this time, Elvin had a chance to stop it before the bloodshed began. He was so absorbed in the data that he almost missed the alert from the ship's proximity sensors. Something was approaching, fast. Disengaging the autopilot, Elvin returned to the pilot's seat just as the AI announced, "Warning, vessel approaching on intercept course. Configuration matches House Ikari security cruiser." Elvin's stomach tightened. Time to intercept? 3 minutes at current velocity. Not enough time to outrun them. The Meridian was fast, but security cruisers were faster. And while his ship was armed with defensive weapons, it was no match for a military-grade vessel. He needed another option. The quantum drive was still spooling up after the initial jump. Standard safety protocols prevented immediate re-entry into quantum space. But there was a workaround, a risky maneuver he'd learned during his military days. "Divert all non-essential power to the quantum drive," Elvin ordered. "Override safety protocols. Authorization Pollard Alpha 79. Warning, override creates significant risk of drive implosion," the AI cautioned. "Noted. Do it anyway." As the ship redirected power, Elvin opened a communication channel. No point hiding, they already knew where he was. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Perrin Ikari's cold features. "Courier Pollard," he said, his tone deceptively pleasant. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding regarding your cargo. Return to Frostholm immediately for clarification." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Elvin replied, stalling for time as the quantum drive's charge indicator crept upward. "I have a contract to fulfill." Perrin's expression hardened. "That contract has been terminated. By continuing, you risk being labeled a thief and data smuggler. Serious charges in Nerian space." "Interesting threat from someone smuggling weapons to destabilize a peaceful colony," Elvin countered. Surprise flashed across Perrin's face, quickly replaced by anger. "So you've accessed the data. All the more reason to return immediately. That information is House Ikari property." "Actually, it's evidence of criminal activity," Elvin corrected, "and it's going exactly where it needs to go." The quantum drive indicator flashed green, ready for emergency jump. "Not a moment too soon. This is your final warning, Pollard," Perrin snarled. "Return now, or we will open fire." Elvin smiled grimly. "Give my regards to your grandfather." Before Perrin could respond, Elvin engaged the quantum drive. The Meridian lurched as reality folded around it, the security cruiser vanishing as the ship plunged into quantum space. Warning lights flashed across the console. The premature jump had strained the drive systems beyond their tolerances. But they were holding, for now. "Damage report," Elvin demanded. "Quantum drive operating at 78% efficiency," the AI reported. "Hull integrity at 92%. Estimated time to Helios Prime, 14 hours. Longer than planned, but they'd make it." Elvin settled back in his seat, allowing himself a moment of relief. The hard part was over, or so he thought. The journey to Helios Prime passed intense vigilance. Elvin expected pursuit, but none materialized. Either the Ikari security cruiser had been unable to follow his emergency jump, or they were waiting at his destination. He used the time to prepare, studying the station layout at Helios Prime and planning his approach to Commander Roland. The data core remained secure, its contents periodically reviewed to ensure nothing had been corrupted during the emergency jump. As the Meridian dropped out of quantum space near Helios Prime, Elvin braced for immediate confrontation. Instead, he found the space around the research station surprisingly quiet. A few transport vessels, some maintenance drones, but no sign of House Ikari ships. "Helios Prime control to unidentified vessel," a voice crackled over the comm. "State your business." "Courier ship Meridian requesting docking clearance," Elvin responded. "I have a delivery for Commander Thalia Roland." A pause then. "Proceed to docking base 7. Security will meet you upon arrival." The docking procedure went smoothly, almost too smoothly. As the Meridian settled into the assigned bay, Elvin secured the data core in an inside pocket of his jacket and performed one final systems check. "Maintain readiness for immediate departure," he instructed the ship's AI. "If I don't return within 2 hours, execute emergency protocols." "Acknowledged," the AI confirmed. Taking a deep breath, Elvin descended the ramp to find 2 Terran security officers waiting. Their uniforms bore the insignia of the research station, not the defense fleet, but their posture and alertness marked them as military. "Courier Pollard," one asked. At Elvin's nod, he continued, "This way, please. Commander Roland is expecting you." They led him through the station's corridors, clean, well-lit passages bustling with scientists and support staff. No one paid particular attention to Elvin, just another courier making a delivery. Commander Roland's office was located in a secure section of the station, accessible only through a series of checkpoints. By the time they reached the final door, Elvin had been scanned 3 times and verified his identity twice. The security officers left him at the threshold. The door slid open to reveal a compact office dominated by a desk cluttered with data pads and holographic displays. Behind it sat a woman in her 50s, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face bearing the lines of someone who had seen too much and slept too little. "Lieutenant Pollard," she said, rising to greet him. "It's been a long time." Elvin blinked in surprise. "You know me?" "I reviewed your file after the Proxima incident," she explained. "Your warnings about weapons smuggling were prescient. If they'd been heeded, thousands of lives might have been saved." The mention of Proxima sent a familiar pang through Elvin's chest. "That's why I'm here," he said, retrieving the data core from his pocket, "to prevent history from repeating itself." Roland accepted the device, her expression solemn. "Thalir contacted me when you left Frostholm. He feared his grandsons might attempt to intercept you." "They tried," Elvin confirmed. "I had to execute an emergency quantum jump to evade them." "Risky maneuver," Roland observed, impressed, "but effective, clearly." She placed the data core on a specialized reader, pressing her thumb to the biometric scanner to unlock its contents. As the holographic display materialized, her eyes widened. "This is comprehensive. Weapons manifests, communication logs, detailed planetary scans." She looked up at Elvin. "With this evidence, we can prevent a catastrophe before it begins." "What happens now?" Elvin asked. "Now," Roland said, her voice hardening with determination, "humanity takes a stand. The Terran Defense Fleet will establish a presence at the colony world to prevent interference while we make peaceful contact. The Interstellar Regulatory Commission will receive copies of the weapons evidence, triggering investigations into both House Ikari and House Marathi. And the Novium deposits." Roland's expression softened slightly. "That will be for the colonists to decide. As a sovereign human world, they'll have the right to determine their own resource policies with full information about the wider galaxy and the value of what they possess." It was more than Elvin had dared hope for, a chance for the lost colony to join the interstellar community on their own terms, without being manipulated or exploited. "What about Thalir?" he asked. "His role in this won't endear him to his family." "Thalir has been playing a long game," Roland replied. "He's arranged for Arella to take control of House Ikari's legitimate operations, while evidence against her cousins is presented to the Narian authorities. It's a calculated risk, but one he felt necessary to preserve his house's honor." Elvin thought of the old Narayan, his apparent frailty masking a mind still sharp enough to outmaneuver opponents decades younger. Will she succeed? "That remains to be seen," Roland admitted, "but Thalir believes in her, says she has the strength to reform House Ikari from within." She studied Elvin thoughtfully. "He speaks highly of you as well." "I just delivered a package," Elvin said modestly. Roland smiled, a rare expression that transformed her severe features. "We both know it was more than that. You risked your life to prevent another tragedy like Proxima. That kind of moral courage is rare, Lieutenant Pollard." "I'm not a lieutenant anymore," he reminded her. "Perhaps not officially," she conceded, "but some qualities never leave a person." She tapped a command into her console. "I've authorized a substantial bonus to your payment in recognition of the risks you took. Additionally, the Defense Fleet would be interested in retaining your services for similar, sensitive deliveries in the future. On a strictly contract basis, of course." The offer took Elvin by surprise. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a purpose," Roland corrected. "A chance to use your skills to protect vulnerable worlds from exploitation, to ensure that what happened at Proxima never happens again." It was tempting, more tempting than Elvin had expected. The courier business paid the bills, but it lacked the sense of mission he'd once found in military service, before bureaucracy and corporate influence had corrupted that purpose. "I'll consider it," he said finally. Roland nodded, satisfied. "That's all I ask." She rose, extending her hand. "Thank you, Elvin. Humanity owes you a debt today, whether they know it or not." As Elvin left the station, returning to the Meridian with a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years, his comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The sender's ID was encrypted, but he had a good guess who it might be. Opening the message, he found a simple text. "My grandfather was right about you. Until we meet again." "Hey!" Elvin smiled, picturing Arella's face, her emerald gold eyes, her cool confidence, the brief warmth of her lips against his. Perhaps they would meet again, under different circumstances. For now, though, he had a ship with a newly repaired quantum drive, credits in his account, and the satisfaction of knowing he'd helped prevent a tragedy. It was more than enough. As the Meridian broke orbit from Helios Prime, setting course for new horizons, Elvin felt something he hadn't experienced since before Proxima. Hope. Not just for himself, but for humanity's future among the stars. Sometimes it seemed the universe did reward a simple act of kindness.